Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Bob versus Willie. We bring up a couple lists here and there. We talk about our artists, who we like. Bob, who do we have for this week?
Carlos Santana.
All right, Carlos Santana. We're going to talk about his top 10 songs. With no more time wasted, let's get into it. Bob, who shall lead?
Well, you go ahead.
All right, I'm going to start the same place as my number 10, the same place as the Santana band started their studio recordings, and that's with Waiting. Waiting is the first song off their first album. Yes, it's an instrumental. Yes, it's not for everyone's taste, but it is pretty much a predecessor to what becomes the Santana band sound. It's very crescendoing, it's loud, it's Latin based, it's heavy. I think it's although maybe not one of his more well-known tunes, I think it's one that has to be on the list, so I slotted it at number 10. Bob, what do you have for 10 and 9?
For number 10, I have Oye Como Ve, and that's a remake of Tito Puente's salsa version from the 1950s, and Santana had a way of being able to take other people's music and making it his own. And then for number 9, Everybody's Everything, which was co-written by Santana and sung by keyboardist Greg Raleigh, who later ended up joining Journey in 1973.
Okay. No problems with either of those, although it's not one of my favorites because I think there's so much better material that comes from his band. I've got that song at number 5, Oye Como Va. It's off the Abraxas album. You've already spoken about it. I don't see how you have a list without it. It's just that popular. Number 8, I have Jingo. Once again, in the same vein as Waiting from Santana's original. I personally, Bob, I love the old stuff. It's got a lot of congas. It's got a lot of drumming in it. It's very rhythmic, very heavy in its own way. And it is yet also another song that really introduced people to that Latin sound that we know Santana for. Bob, what do you got?
For number 8, I have Evil Ways. And Evil Ways was originally written by Clarence Sonny Henry, and it was recorded by Willie Bobo. Now, Willie Bobo is really important because he's the first person that took Latin music and merged it with blues, and he influenced Santana very much in the early days. She's Not There, off of Moonflower from 1977, is my number 7 choice. And that was a Zombies hit back in 1964. And again, Greg Walker ends up singing the lead in that one.
All right, my number 7, you've already said Everybody's Everything. Another one, it's included on that classic album that everyone knows of Santana, where it's just the cover where they're holding the bird. I like it. It's not as heavy. It's very festive. I think it's pretty good. 6 is a little different. Off a lesser known album called Inner Secrets. It's sort of in the middle period of Santana's career. Originally a Buddy Holly song. I believe it was also covered by Blind Faith. So the Santana band does a version of it that I like of all the 3 versions. It gives, you just mentioned a cover, She's Not There. This is the cover that I selected that I thought was indicative of how the band was good with their own material and could also reinvent other people's music.
Actually, with that particular song, I really didn't think it was that great of a song as far as being an original thing and having the Santana sound. I thought that it was very similar to Blind Faith's version myself. For number 6, I have Blues for Salvador, and so it was written for his son in 1987, and it won a Grammy in 1989 for Best Rock Instrumental. And for number 5, I have Soul Sacrifice, which was the final song of his set at the legendary Woodstock Festival, and although I never didn't go to the festival, I've seen the movie like many people have, at least, a dozen times. And it's a great song, and that song kicked off his career.
Yeah, I agree. I've got that song later on in my list. For number 5, I have Mother's Daughter off of Braxis. This is probably, of all the tunes I have on this list, going to be the least recognizable. I don't know. I think for me, this one's personal in that I just always loved the groove. I always got excited when this came on. I was in the middle of the album. It's an interesting, I don't know, love story trio that Santana, he doesn't sing of, but he is the ringleader of. Number 4, Soul Sacrifice. You've already spoken about that. I think that and a couple other songs, one of which is coming up on my list. That has to be on any top 10 list, in my opinion. As you said, it is that image of Santana on stage at Woodstock. You can't have a top 10 Santana without that song, even if you're someone who's not into big extended jams.
I never considered Mother's Daughter, but I really like the line from it that your mother ain't so bad. What happened to you? It's like it's a classic line of you married somebody because you thought they would be like their mother.
Yeah.
In most cases, you don't want that to happen, but in some cases, you want it to. All right, for my number 4, I have Maria Maria from 1999 Supernatural album, and that particular song ended up being a pretty popular song, and the album itself won 8 Grammy Awards. Number 3 is also from Supernatural, and it's Smooth, the song with Rob Thomas. And again, that won Grammy Awards. And the lyrics were originally very sexually charged, but they kind of toned them down. But the sound of the song is still pretty sexually charged.
Yeah, okay. Those are, I'll speak about those a bit. I personally, Bob, don't have anything from late period Santana. That means the 90s or anything like that. You just mentioned part of the reason why I don't. I felt that was an era that it was Santana and he was bringing on people who wanted to play with Santana. If you're taking things out from me to sort of help the song be more popular and palatable, that counts as major points against me in my book. But I'll give you credit to the fact it was a huge album. And for most people today, that's going to be what they remember Santana by, but not for me. Number 3, I have a song called Gitano. It's off the Amigos album. It's very much in the flamenco style of guitar, Latin flamenco. The lyrics are simple. It just has some of the best sort of nylon string guitar, steel string guitar. It's just a wonderful song that builds to a crescendo. I know a lot of people haven't heard of it. If you haven't, do yourself a favor, listen to it when you're done watching this. And my number 2, I don't care if it's cliche or not, it's the other cover that I think everyone's going to have on a top 10 list. Black Magic Woman, Gypsy Queen. Yes, we can talk about it. That's not their song originally, but the truth is, this is one of those instances where the song was covered in such a way that no one will really ever think of it as anything other but a Santana album. I'm sorry, a song off their second most popular album. It's got to be, I'm hoping, Bob, in your top couple choices left.
Well, in my last 2 choices, I matched yours, Black Magic Woman, Gypsy Queen. And I enjoyed the original version by Peter Green. And when Santana came out, because back during that time period, Peter Green and he was considered to be the equivalent of Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck. He was put right up there with the rest of them. And Fleetwood Mac was actually his band. So when Santana heard him, he got turned on to it. Now, the last part of the song, Gypsy Queen, is actually written by a Hungarian jazz guitarist named Gabor Szabo. And for number 1, I have Put Your Lights On, which again is from 1999 Supernatural, and Everlast sings the lead in that particular one.
Okay, I'll say my number one first because I think this will pretty much flesh out what our differences are here. Mine, and I'll be honest, I don't even pronounce it correctly. Toussaint L'Ouverture. I'm just approximating that pronunciation. It's an instrumental about a famous historical figure. It's about 4 minutes long. I think it's Santana's best guitar playing ever on any of his songs. It is, once again, it is anthemic. It is that Santana sound of building and building and building to something bigger that I think embodies what we think of Santana and people will remember him most by. Bob, I'm going to get right into it with you. You have 3 songs off Supernatural. I don't think it's a bad album. And I'll tell you that I'm happy that the song you picked for number 1, if I had put one song from that album on my list, it would have been that with Everlast. So I give you credit on that. But the other 2 with Rob Thomas, 10 songs, and you've got 3 of them from an album. Bob, was that 1999? I mean,
Well,
that's so far from Santana's best years. That's his core years. And I'm not taking issue with the songs themselves. Bob, I just don't know how, if you look at all of his work, you're giving 3 songs on that album to your top 10.
well, the reason why I chose that album, 3 songs off the album, was because it's like Santana was somebody that I knew from the 1960s. I saw him rise up and I saw him go through a lot of different changes. And then when he came out with that album, it was like he was starting all over again. And his popularity was as big as it was back in the 1960s. And
Bigger.
I thought it was a stroke of genius because when he came out with that album, he did it on purpose because he had just signed with Arista Records, and the founder, Clive Davis, was trying to help him to make his sound more contemporary so it would relate to the people during that time period and not just the baby boomers from the Woodstock generation.
Okay. I agree with everything you say. I agree with everything. What I am going to say to finish up here is I think this is a topic that a lot of people can enjoy to throw back and forth about Santana in general and just artists in general. Popularity, longevity. You're right. Santana had a return act. I just don't see it as his best of his career, but maybe it is because you said it was rivaling his popularity in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. Bob, I'd go one further and say that's the most popular he's ever been. It's the most popular he ever will be. I don't know. More importantly, what do you think? Go ahead and drop a comment. There's a ton of Santana material. Neither Bob nor I got into a lot of his middle years in the mid to late 70s. Some of the people like that. He certainly waded into disco even and some stuff that maybe was more missed than hit. But tell us in the comments. He's Bob Gersten. I'm Willie Witten. Until next time, this has been Bob versus Willie.